Right. Hello, Ivan and
Hey,
Krista.
Nippin, how are you? Congratulations on the new book. I can't wait to see it.
Yes, thank you. I need a lot of luck, so thank you for that. Yes. It's been a long time since we have last spoken, right? It's been a while.
Yes, I think we were both a lot younger.
Yes, yes,
Wasn't
yes.
it during COVID?
I think it was during COVID. Yeah,
Hmm.
Yes,
yeah.
we did a lecture at the university, right? That was the last time. Or was it? No, no, we did. We had a chat afterwards.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it's really
Oh,
good to see that you and Rob are becoming so successful. I see the words getting out there, and you guys are doing some really good work and making some very interesting and powerful points in our safety community. So congratulations to both of you.
thank you, thank you. So tell me, this is more about you and your work. Tell me what would you like to share? Where would you like to begin? You've been doing some great work. I see your book being published. Let's talk a little bit about the motivation, or maybe you just want to for the listeners. I know most people you are very popular in the risk and safety world. Maybe a very light introduction would help, and then we will get into the motivation to write this book from both of you, from your
Sure, sounds
perspectives.
great. Why don't we start with Chris?
Me?
Yeah, a little light
Okay.
introduction.
Well, I'm Crista Vesel, and I'm an adjunct professor at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. And I teach a lot about language, which is unusual in the safety world, right? So our students are adult safety and engineer practitioners around the world in amazing jobs and positions. And so much of this message is new to them. It's rarely brought forth. So I help them explore, you know, what is the language of learning? What do we do that stops us from learning? Because there are a lot of what I call sleights of language that do that. Um, and so I help them explore that, and I help them explore semiotics. Thanks to Rob Long sending me on that path. I appreciate that. And I also teach crisis leadership from a very different perspective. Things like, culture, sense making. What is a complex system? Why do we have to treat it differently? A lot of what's in our book, actually, is what I teach. So that's mostly what I do.
Great,
Yeah.
Ivan.
And most people know me. My background is mostly operational as a pilot, and you know that. But lately, I've been doing this professor thing too. I'm a full professor at the university in advanced safety engineering management, which is the title of our master's degree program at UAB. And the reason we got involved in this particular book is I needed a textbook for a new course that I created on HOP. It seemed like something that was very necessary at the university level. A lot of students were asking for it. And the textbook itself, I mean, the book is a textbook, but it doesn't read like a textbook. It actually makes things accessible in terms of both the history and the application of HOP. And it also is doable. And we finally saw this just last week, as a matter of fact, in our final exam, if you will. Not that we really have final exams, but the students had to do a HOP implementation presentation. And each and every one of them from different walks of life was able to take this book and turn it into something useful at their organization. And so that's why we wrote it. That's what it's all about. And it seems like it's pretty effective. The students are really happy with it. Um, I can't say it's perfect. No book is, but it's definitely a step in the right direction to make this information accessible to a larger audience.
And both of you come from very different walks of life, very different disciplines, of course, very different motivations. What was the inner motivation for both of you to write this book? I hear, Krista, you talk about language, and Ivan, you take a more operational perspective. But what was that inner need to get into something as intense as writing a book for both of you?
I'm going to let you go first on this one.
Are you okay? I don't mind letting you go first. As I said, for me, I needed a textbook for this new course that I was creating in HOP. But it was also an opportunity to get some ideas down that had been brewing, long in the brewing, as James Reason would say, right? So these were ideas that have come from many, many walks of life, from many disciplines, from the works of many famous people. So we brought a lot of it together. And it's really important to understand that HOP doesn't come from a single perspective. It comes from multiple perspectives. It comes from social psychology. It comes from safety engineering management. It comes from defenses in depth. None of that stuff is left off the table, but it has to be carefully knitted together so that we don't follow a natural human tendency toward fixing situations and fixing systems and moving more toward understanding. So that's what motivated me to do it. And how about you?
Well, but something we noticed over the years teaching with the university is that students that would come in and say, oh, we do HOP in my work. Almost across the board, whatever they'd been taught was not really the philosophy of HOP. In fact, whatever consultant had brought it to them had manipulated it to a way where it was still a blame placement on people and not truly caring for people. So first you must care for people and bring that across, help people recognize some of their biases, move into that space. We're never not biased, right? So we need to admit that. We need to work together to reveal that and then work, to get past those things. And so we wanted to present something both in the book and in the class and in our work that helps people move into a place where you can really apply it. Mm-hmm. Because it has academic theory, and that's something that has not been brought across in other books. In fact, there's rarely references to where this comes from, so we wanted to say, hey, we stand on the shoulders of this foundation of these people, and many of them were at the top of their topic. So, Edgar Schein with culture. He is the father of organizational culture.
Reuben McDaniel and Carl Weick in terms of sense making.
Yes. Ideas about what is a complex system? Why does it affect how we treat our systems, how we make sense of them? Or, you can't, in a complex system, it's not fully predictable or controllable. So what else can we do? We wanted to bring in the concept of margin. If you can increase the margin in your system, where if you do have a failure, it's not as extreme, maybe you can actually move into learning. That's really critical.
And one of the big questions our students had was, okay, so our leadership is interested in understanding what the message is. What's the message? So we wanted to help them to be able to articulate that message and bring this to leadership. Aside from telling leaders, hey, you got to get down on the shop floor and see what people are doing, which I don't think really works, because every time they come down to the shop floor, nobody wants to see them there, and everybody changes what they're doing. So That's probably not the best way to do it. But how do you move leadership into a position of inquiry? How do you get leaders to start to become the learners that we need them to become, especially in a society that pushes leaders to be becoming the knowers in our system? So we wanted to explore that territory a little bit, and we wanted to give some tools. And what we found through our history of working with different companies and certainly working with the Forest Service was that a big part of this was bringing leadership to the table in dialogue and helping them to understand that it's okay to ask questions. It's better, in fact, to ask questions and be in that mode of inquiry, working again off of Edgar Schein's late work. But as we started to put the book together, we realized that there were certain key aspects of that discussion that help leaders to move into a different space, make it okay, right? And part of that is explaining the difference between simple, complicated, and complex systems and why we have to do things differently in complex systems. That seems to open up the space for a dialogue with leadership that allows them to come to that table, right? And be in that mode of inquiry. So we wanted to give that to our students, and we wanted to see experimentally and experientially if this actually works. So we put the book out there. We've had our first run of the class now. First semester is over of doing the class. And what we found is that the students really did capitalize on these different pieces that we put in there, these different tools, if you will. And they were able to bring their leadership to the table through these different modalities. That's success for us. I mean, that meant a great deal to me personally, to see that they were able to capitalize on that and make them conversant with their leadership in a way that was non-confrontational, that brought them to the table in a collegial sort of way. So that was our goal, and I think we're achieving it. We're going to find out here. We get our first reviews for the class here in the next couple of weeks, but every indication so far is that they were successful.
But honestly, this goes, it's not about the class. It's about helping all kinds of companies and people at different levels in those companies understand some topics. You don't have to understand everything. But if you can do one thing, and that's move from a place where you think you know things to a place where you say, I don't know. I need to learn. I need to be curious. That is so powerful. That opens the space for learning in a different way. And it opens a space for dialogue. We need to have dialogues with all kinds of people. And it's something we rarely do in our lives. So if we can just do that, it's fantastic.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's the idea.
Sorry. Yes.
No worries.
So if you were to approach an organization, you talk a lot about getting leaders engaged. How do you get this message across that this is an important... The reason why I'm asking is that there's lots of books and lots of podcasts and a lot of articles written on HOP, Human and Organizational Performance. And how do you distill it down to a philosophy, a methodology, a way of communicating to leaders that, hey, this is what you need to focus on? What is that message that you are trying to promote through this book? That's one question. And the other question I had was, there's a beautiful title. I love the title of the book, Human and Organizational Potential. And we'll come to that in a minute. But let's first talk about this first thing, that what is the underpinning philosophy that would engage people, leaders, for example, in your words? What is that one message that you would like to... Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't want to take away from a lot of the work that's already been done in HOP, right? So we've got lots of really, really good people out there talking about HOP and doing some fantastic work. Most of those people are doing it in presentations and in dialogues with different organizations. So as we start to think about that, we're not trying to take away from that. We're trying to show the underpinning for that conversation. So, for example, Todd goes out and he talks to multitudes of companies, and he's brilliant in his delivery. He really is. There's none better in bringing the HOP message out there. We're not trying to take away from that. We're trying to show that what Todd does is standing on the shoulders of many, many people, lots and lots of research. So we try and bring that into the book so that we can help with that. It also gives people a direction. So if they see something that they're interested in, they've got a direction that they can go to try and look for more information, right? So I guess our message is that it's not a standalone thing. It's not an easy thing. If it was easy, everybody'd be doing it, right? It takes work to do this. And it's not pushing the easy button of blame somebody and that fixes your problem. It's not even looking for fixes to problems. It's exploring and understanding. And that is really important. Kind of like your shirt suggests, right? We're moving to that place of understanding instead of just correcting and fixing, right? So I think that it complements a lot of the work that's being done out there and supports it in a way that delivers on that academic underpinning and that research and that experiential knowledge that exists in the HOP community.
And in addition, something we really want to get across, this is not a recipe. In fact, we don't like to call it a method. And we try to help companies self-design, because it has to come from inside of them. There is not something we can place on top of them. That's a push. We want to create a pull. This desire to learn, this desire to move to a new space. And that can be hard to do, we'll be honest. We do run across companies, agencies, governments that aren't ready to learn. They're not actually ready to put themselves in that space. And in that case, we step back. But for the ones that are ready and engaged, we come in as sometimes teachers, definitely facilitators, and mentors. Our goal is not to stay in their business for a long period of time. We want to empower them. Empower some people that can step forward into the role of helping to teach others. And then we step out. Maybe we'll coach from a distance, but we're not there to actually take over and give them something that is preset, because that never works. It'll seem to work for a short amount of time, but after that, they're left flat, and they'll just drift back to where they were before.
I think if you were to look at one thing in this book that is a target, the book delivers bridges. So we've got these ways of thinking, these islands, if you will, that people hold on to, islands of thought, and we're giving them bridges to new islands of thought. We're not telling them that they have to do it. We're not telling them that their island is ugly. We're just saying there are other islands out there, and these are some of the ways to get to those islands.
That's a beautiful
So let's all
analogy.
go out and be explorers.
So you both have extensive experience in education, and through the years, how would you describe your ideal student? What kind of people, and by that I mean, what kind of people are ready to embark on a journey like this? Can you help me understand that?
Oh, Nippin, that's a great question. So if we look at the kind of students that let me rephrase. Let me explain what a hero is to me. Okay? A hero is somebody who has a steadfast idea of the way the world works, deep assumptions that tell them the way the world works, and they're willing to go in and question those assumptions. They're willing to ask the Descartesian question, is that so, right? And so when we start to think about that, we think of people in history that have done that, that have gone from one extreme, in some cases, to a completely different extreme. Aldo Leopold is a great example of that, the guy who wanted the eradication of all predatory species in the western part of the United States so that more game species could grow. And he realized that that was a mistake. And when he realized that that was a mistake, his entire life changed. He questioned the assumptions that he had about his entire existence. When we look at our students, when we rejoice is when we see students doing that same thing. When they enter into the program and they're steadfast that this is the only way safety could be done, it has to be done this way, and here's the recipe for safety, and they walk out and they go, wait a minute, maybe there is no recipe. Maybe I've got to be in a mode of inquiry. Maybe I've got to be learning. And when they start to shift from that doing and knowing to the experimenting and learning piece, then we're the most pleased instructors you could possibly imagine.
We have some students come in and they're ready from the forefront, and that's exciting for us, because then we can lead them through our courses. We teach about half the program, and we see them grow, and that's stimulating to us. But honestly, our best successes are the ones that fought the most. I mean, they come in angry, right? And they hit my course first, Crisis Leadership, and I have this issue. And I help them do what we're talking about. You know, I help them question. Every time they write something, I say, okay, well, let's see if we can look at it from a different perspective. And maybe they fight through that. Maybe they fight through some of our other courses. You know what happens? It'll be 10 o'clock at night. We'll get a text. Can you talk? Okay. And they're having literally this shift in their psyche, and it's uncomfortable. Often when we move into a space of learning, it is very uncomfortable, and we tell that to students from the beginning. You know, when you move into this space, get ready to not like it sometimes, to fight against it. But just let it happen, see where it takes you. They have this tremendous shift. And then they do things like join the PhD program. Yeah. They become these mentors to us as well as others. And it's so exciting when that happens.
Yeah,
It
it's kind of
is.
funny because when we each entered the program through the same course, Crisis Leadership. And when we first took it over, it was all about crisis, and how you manage a crisis. Well, I don't know that you really manage a crisis. I think you negotiate your way through crises and you try and
That's
use a
right.
bunch of different modalities to try and understand what you're dealing with. But that's a whole another story. What we came to understand was first we wanted to change the title, and now we realize that the crisis leadership might be the crisis that's internal inside leaders that they have to face. Right? And that
Let's
crisis
talk
could
about
be a
that little
crisis
bit more.
of challenging their assumptions. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, let's talk about that little bit more. The crisis inside. I think that's a powerful one. What do you mean by that? Help me understand that.
Yeah, sure. Well, so it goes to this idea that we have these assumptions about the way the world works, these deep beliefs about how the world is working around us. How is safety created? Is it created through punishment? Is it created through a carrot and stick modality? Is this the way we want to go forward? Or is that fear-based? Where has that worked? Where hasn't it worked? We want leaders, if they come in with those kinds of ideas, to be able to challenge those ideas, to challenge those concepts. But the other thing we recognize is that everybody's a leader in their organization. If we look at EH&S specialists, they're all leaders, but they're something else too. EH&S folks are put in a really difficult position, right? They are the translators between the C-suite and the frontline worker. They're the people who have to bring the stories of the frontline worker to the C-suite in a way that's palatable. It's really a difficult job that they have. So they actually function in a bunch of ways, not just translators, but also the people that negotiate this really, really rocky shoreline of information and how to present it. They also have to kind of act as improv comics. They can't sit there and say, no, your perspective is wrong. They can't come from that right-wrong place. They've got to be in a yes-and sort of modality. So part of the program that all of the courses I consider a program. In fact, it's becoming a track in the university in our program, our master's degree program. And when we think about that, what the whole idea is to move those people, to get them to a place where they can start to do that improv comedy that say, yes, and your thing isn't wrong, but here's another way of looking at it. Yes, and oh, by the way, all the stuff that you've done has gotten us to this point. How do we move from this point to the next point, right? So we're looking forward, we're looking ahead. And that's resulted in them questioning all kinds of things. Questioning KPIs, questioning the entire idea around crime and punishment in a safety context, questioning ideas about the way they tell stories and narratives. How do stories manifest, right? And how do we present them in a way that's not just palatable to the front office, but also palatable to the field office? So we start to understand what we came out of the learning review with, which was this idea that learning products have to be designed for the different audiences that we have within our organization, and everybody's a learner.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I think, sorry, Krista, you wanted to say something. No, go for it.
Go ahead.
No, go
Oh,
for it.
no,
You had
please.
something on your mind. No, I wanted to bring you in actually at this point because you started off with the use of language as a very, very powerful tool to understand and enhance learning. Maybe talk to us a little bit more about how do you see that happening in a very practical manner?
Well, so language is something we all share. We use all the time, but we rarely step back and say, is the language we're using moving us toward learning or away from learning? So I help people understand some of the things that happen that take us away from learning, that they use all the time. Binary oppositions. So, it's this way or it's this way and there's nothing in between, right? Success or failure. We look at things like counterfactuals. In accident investigation, it happens all the time. We say, they should have done this. They could have done this, right? It becomes a blame and it becomes very directed. Language is not neutral. No. So if we can change that language and start to learn about those things, particularly agentive language. Agentive language is, an agent is the cause of an action, the doer of an action, right? So, when we use agentive language, especially in accident investigation, what we're doing is blaming people, whether we know it or not. Now, that's an easy thing to do, and it's something inherent in us, especially in the English language, because English is a very agentive language. We don't usually say, the pen fell off the table. We'll say, Ivan dropped the pen, right? I mean, that's just the nature of our language, but it becomes the nature of our culture and how we communicate. And then that creates this line of blame that just feeds right through, and it's very comfortable for us. So learning what those sleights of language, I call them sleights of language, like a sleight of hand that a magician uses. What are those sleights of language that can block us from learning? And then step into that space and reimagine it. So, instead of using the word, cause in an accident, what else could we do? HOP it's kind of a foundation for other things we do, but really our main goal is to bring across our learning review, which is a different way to look at accidents and incidents. And in the learning review, we don't use the word cause at all. Because once you use that word, you just start moving toward that. And once you find the cause or causes, I don't care how many there are, honestly, and you have a complex system with people, okay, if you have mechanics, a mechanical system, simple or complicated system, yes, we can find things. We can take it apart. We can fix it, put it back together. That's great. With people, we can't do that.
No, and
People are, we're complex.
No,
So, what we do.
No, go for
Please.
it. I interrupted you. Sorry, my bad. But my point really was that how interesting it is that it is sometimes seen as a semantic play by people who don't understand the power of language, right? They simply ignore it as, oh, this is just a play of words. And maybe talk a little bit about why it is so important to pay attention to language, Crista, from your perspective.
Well, one of the first exercises I do, whether it's in classes or in talks or workshops, is I like to ask people a quick question. When I say the word investigation, what comes to mind? Give me a word or two that comes to mind. And we collect those. Sometimes we'll turn it into a word cloud. We'll see what that is. That is full of agentive language and scared language. People are scared. They don't want to share. They have no psychological safety. Investigation is something that they feel they have no control over, and yet they need control. So all these things come out. And then I do the opposite. I say, okay, now I'm going to give you another word. What do you associate with this? Learning. And it's interesting how that opens up the language in a completely different way. But it's not just the language. If you watch the people in the audience, they change. Their semiotics, the nonverbal signs and symbols they're sending us through their senses, they change. They become engaged. So if we can engage around learning and get rid of things like investigation, it becomes powerful. I'll show you something here.
Yeah, please
So
do this.
one of my semiotics class, well, actually it was my language class initially when I had semiotics in it, they created a challenge coin, a semiotic challenge coin. And so the first side looks like this. So what do you see there, Nippin?
I see alphabet and I see a tree. I see, I see a coin with a shadow underneath. What else do I see? It's very hazy, actually, so it's hard to make out. But
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah, mostly. That's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
So I see a tree with some roots. I see alphabet, and I can't make out what it reads, but there's a coin with a gray circumference underneath and a white above. So maybe it's a contrast between day and night, something like that. Yeah.
So how does that make you feel?
How does that make me feel? Depressed. Sad.
Pretty good.
Okay. So
Yes.
we need to move into that feeling space too. So here we have a dead tree. You know, think of root cause analysis.
Yes.
We have a black and white image. So we have a binary opposition, and yet we feel terrible about it, right? We have a barrier here. On the ends of the barrier are A's for agentive language. In the middle is a B for blame. So this is what we're moving away from.
What I also see is
Now, if
that
we
you
look
start,
at this side,
if you turn it back again, what I see, Krista, maybe both sides is a circle which represents nature, which represents everything which is unpredictable. And now that I can see the tree in between, which we call the root cause, it's basically putting order to nature. So I see a classic dialogue or dialectic between nature and culture. So you have root cause, you want to find certainty in an uncertain world. That's what I see. Now I can see it more clearly. Yes.
Nice.
that's awesome. That's very expansive right there. So we want to move away from that and move toward.
Yes. So now I see nature in harmony with nature. I see two hands with, I don't know what's written underneath. Maybe you can help me. And it's understanding
Learning.
at the top. Okay. So learning.
Understanding.
Yeah. So you're aligning nature. So you're working with nature as opposed to working against nature. So if you flip it back, it was nature against culture. When you flip it back, now what I see is you are not working against nature, you're working with nature, which is care. And that's a symbol of care right in the middle. So it's a very different way of looking at the world. Yeah.
Very nice, very nice. And some other things we see here might be, growth.
Yes.
Now we have people, we have hands. So we're engaging the people in care.
There's also
We
a
have
mountain,
this,
right? Yeah. There's a mountain which is about
Yes.
stability.
Nice.
Yes.
And the path
And also-
goes off into the distance and it never ends. Our learning journey never ends.
Yes, and
And
that
in
is
the-
potential.
The beauty of this, Nippin, is that we didn't create this. Students in our class got together. And after taking several of our classes, this is what came to their mind. This is what emerged from their thinking and their discussions. And so the students actually created this challenge coin.
That's you have, and I was coming to that question of and organizational potential. Maybe this is the right time to do that. Talk to me about this book title, which is all about human and organizational potential. What do you mean by that?
Well, we explain it inside the book, of course, because we kind of have to, because we're departing a little bit from the traditional human organization performance. But the idea of demanding performance is not really consistent with the message of HOP. When we start thinking about HOP, we're really talking about potentials. Todd talks about capacities a lot, like what are capacities? Well, capacities and potential, those two things really work together well. Capacities and performance, well, one is the outcome of the other. If we have capacities, we can have increased performance. So we didn't want to do that. We wanted to tie this title in particular back to the idea, the original construct around HOP, which is bringing people together in this way, much like the challenge coin, of challenging assumptions, moving forward, getting into that space of understanding and learning, right? Opening ourselves up. And sure, that could be described as a performance, but performance again is an outcome. We wanted to talk about it more on that idea from the capacity perspective, more as potential. How can we develop that potential?
In addition, performance can become that push, right? Mm-hmm. Leaders can take that idea and now use it to try to make their people perform. That's no better than where we were before. Mm-hmm. So by opening it up to potential, that's limitless. It's like the coin, right? We're moving into our potential personally, as a company, as a leader. Let's all move into that space together and explore it.
And we see what Chris is talking about in some of the people who are out there. I'm not going to say sharing HOP, but peddling HOP, peddling a product for their purposes. Most of those folks that are out there peddling that HOP product, they're in that performance space. They want to be in that performance space because they're delivering something that is not necessarily consistent with the principles of HOP. So we wanted to kind of wrestle it back and say, hey, when we did this originally, in fact, we came up with this title, Human Organization Potential, in the Forest Service. When we started bringing HOP to the Forest Service, we were looking for a name. And we came up with HOP as potential, not as performance. And this is before Todd named it, before it had that energy behind it. Up until that point, it was called HPI, Human, Human...
Thank goodness we
Performance
forget.
Index?
It's
Yeah,
okay.
thank goodness we forget, right?
I think it's Human Performance Index, something
Human
like that.
performance improvement is what.
That's it.
Human performance improvement is
That's
what it
even
originally
worse.
stood for. And so we didn't like that title at all. We really steered away from that. It didn't resonate well when we tried to bring it to our people in the Forest Service. Two of us literally brought HOP from Todd, modified it for the Forest Service, and brought it to the Forest Service to almost 30,000 people. And in those dialogues with people, the HPI title didn't resonate. It didn't resonate at all with our population. So that made us start to question and made us start to think about a different title. And I think actually Ben Iverson came up with the Human Organization Potential title to begin with.
So here's one final question to both of you, which is that what view do you take of a human being, considering that this is a book on human and organizational potential?
Ooh, well, honestly, I don't really like the word human in our workplaces, and I'll tell you why. Human becomes a label that helps us set other humans apart from us. See, they would do that. That's their problem. I would never do that. It becomes an attribution error. And anytime we create a label like that, it has the potential to be manipulated. I prefer, even though we used it on the book because it's a common theme, we thought about this. We did use the common theme, but we talk about it in the book. We prefer the word people. We're all people.
Yes.
That means we should care about each other. We should move into that space. I should care about you, you should care about me, and then we should care about the work together.
And we start to look at this in a global and social sense, right? So society has a tendency to push us toward things like spreadsheets and modalities that are mathematical in their origin. We start to think about it in a very different way. Like you said with the circle, what does the circle mean? What does society mean? And I think about tribal titles, like the names of different tribes in the western part of the United States especially. And when tribal members are asked what that means, what does it mean? What does the name mean? They often come back and say it means the people. And so we started thinking, how does that reflect on what we're trying to create? Because I think what we're trying to create societally, both you and Rob and everybody else who's engaged in the safety community, is they're trying to create a tribe of people that are working together to recognize the importance of everyone within that tribe and to value the contributions of everyone in that tribe. So for us, the idea of potential, the idea of the people, that becomes very, very important to us. And that's what we wanted to try and capture, which is why we've got a crew walking off to try and catch a spot fire on a fire line. It's a very hazardous job, and these guys are marching off
Yes,
to
I saw
war,
that.
so to
It's
speak, right?
yes. I was going to come to that, but you already explained that. So what has been for both of you coming to write this book and now getting to engage with people who are reading this book and maybe presumably feeding back things to you? What has been your learning so far? And if you were to do it again, would you do anything different?
Well, we had changes to the book the very day we published it.
Yeah,
so
you
yes,
said
we
that.
would do
Yes,
some things
yes.
differently. Yeah, so we're definitely into continuous improvement. There's no question about that. But what we're getting from this that's really interesting is we've had a couple of different book clubs across the world ask us to come and talk with them. What we're getting from them is really positive feedback in terms of applicability, right? Which is what we really wanted. Did we make this accessible, this information? Did we make it doable? Did we give them some bridges or tools to get to different places? And the indications that we're getting right now is that, yes, that is the case. Now, it has been fairly new. I mean, the book hasn't been out for 5 months now. So it's still pretty new out in the community. But the feedback that we're getting so far is that we've hit that mark. Now, are there things that we would do differently? Absolutely. Is there a second edition in our minds already? Absolutely. Yeah. So no question about that.
One big part of it, in this book, you'll see a lot of examples from people we've worked with or our students. Those are the powerful pieces. If there was a second book like this, it would be about the application and about how people we know are applying it, because that's the hardest part, right? You can read it all you want. You can read a book, you can take a class, but until you actually go apply it and have those challenges, and maybe you need some input from others on how to overcome those or reframe it, that's the important part.
Yeah, and I think that that's a really good point, that this book is born of application. So we didn't just jump into this book and compile theory. We struggled with application, how to make it work
Yes.
in different environments, how to start it off, where does it fit in a larger scheme of cultural change, right? All of these things are really important aspects. So when we present on the book or we talk about the book, generally that's where we go, is we talk about how HOP fits in a grander scheme of things. And this book helps with that. I don't say it answers it, because as Crista said, there's no recipe. There's no simple way to do this. Every organization has to engage in elements of self-design. So that's really where we are. And like I said, the feedback so far has been pretty good. So.
You've been traveling the world ever since you published this book. You have been interacting with a lot of people. Any particular story that resonates with you? Anything that people really respond very well to stories. So anything in particular that resonates with you would be awesome to share.
Yes, actually, we had the opportunity to go work with the New Zealand Health Quality and Safety Commission, who is using our learning review across the nation now for all health-related accidents. Incidents. And
work.
you know, something that is amazing, this is a pen from there,
Yes.
is that the Maori native influence is so strong. And we learned so much from that perspective of being invited into that space. And like, for example, one word that they use, ako, which means to be both a teacher and a learner. They have a story of a teacher and students going into a building, and when they come out, you cannot tell the student from the teacher. That is powerful.
And
I
their,
think that's
their application of this and their understanding of this, when we start to bring, I don't care who is developing the idea of HOP, that's not the important part. When we bring the construct of HOP to people, the thing that resonates with them the most is this idea that we are doing this in unison, we're doing this together, that this is a journey that we're engaging on. It's not a simple do this, and we're going to get to the end. There is no end. It's a continuous process of learning, and we're opening ourselves up to that.
That's right, yes. Is there anything else you would like to share before we close? It's been a wonderful discussion. I'm very happy with it. Anything else that comes to mind that you would like to share?
Well, we're very happy to be on the journey with people like you. I mean, we enjoy the inquiry that you engage in, and the way you're approaching everything is really consistent with what the rest of us are doing. So I think that probably the big message that I've got is, let's understand that that's what we're here to do, is to work together. We all offer something to the community. We're not trying to take away from anything that anybody else is doing. We just want to make things more accessible and more doable. And that's what we're all working toward.
You can consider it like a mosaic, right? We have many parts, but it needs to be in balance and unison, and we need to be connected. So that's what we like to do, is connect with others.
Excellent. And that is a beautiful place to bring this to a closure.